Well, yeah, hello and welcome. My name is Gustav Emrich and I'm product manager for JVC KY-PZ Europe. And today we're talking about how to do the technical setup by KY-PZ100, RMLP, and of course the Roland mixers.
I'm Nico Suarez, tech support for Roland Pro AV in Europe. And yeah, we both together, we are going to show you how we integrate and how we communicate JVC products and Roland products.
So in this video we want to show you how to do the IP settings on the KY-PZ100 and the RMLP controller as well. But there is as we explained in the video before, we already have a lot of connection capabilities, especially on the IP section. So today we concentrate on the local setup, so in a local network. That's a normal common use, for example, in the auditorium as well. But if you're doing live streaming and so on, you need to have an outside connection, you need DNS setup, you need the gateway setup. And of course, if you use a Wi-Fi dongle, how you do the wireless setup, or in case of an LTE dongle, how you set up your LTE dongle. That will be a bunch of stuff. And today, again, we talk only about the local network setup. And let's start with a normal RJ45 connection, going to a PoE switcher. From the switcher, we're going into the RMLP 100. We're going into the Roland Vision mixer. That is our setup where we're talking right now. So let's have a view to the camera settings as first. So the most easy thing is, especially when the camera is brand new, you're using the infrared controller. Once you have set up the IP settings, you can use also your PC to doing this setting, but in this case, let's play as a new camera. So what we have connected in the back side is just the RJ45 connection with a Cat6 cable, and we're going to our switcher. And let's do the pre-settings of the IP settings. Please hold down the menu button for a short while, and then the menu comes up into the screen. And let's go down to the network settings, which are here. Say set, and then we're going directly to the connection setup. Let me shortly explain what else is there on that network setup. First is the general connection setup for your IP settings. We have the web browser settings. This is normally on port 80. If you want to use a different port, you can set up it here. Here are all your live streaming setups. That's the clip server. You can transfer files over FTP. You can handle also metadata. If you want to have some dedicated nodes into the file, the camera is able to hold metadata, and you can transfer that also by FTP, or you can import the metadata. As well, there's NTTP setup, so you can use a time server to synchronize the picture if you have more than one camera. It gives you a kind of synchronization by a time server. And there is zero configuration mode. That is for dedicated application with other devices, so it's an automatically IP settings. And of course, then you can do your fully network resettings. Okay, let's go to the connection setup. In this case, so we're using the direct LAN connection. If you use a USB host, then you will take the next part, and there's a wizard for you, and that helps you all the way through for your settings. Let's take the LAN setup at first. So we're going here, we have two choices. If you are working on a network which supports dynamic IP settings, you can use DHCP for that one, but I prefer, when we do installation, I prefer to do a manual setup here, and I go into the manual setup. And the first thing what you see is our IP address. Simply press set on here, and then you can edit your settings on the IP address. In our example is 192.168.0.101 for that camera. So if you have set up this one, you go to the next part, and then it's your subnet. It's typically on a local network. It's handled about 253 items or hardwares. So we're using a subnet is of 255.255.255.0. It's called the typical Class C net. And then we have the gateway. If you like to control the camera outside the local network, or you want to do streaming to a streaming platform, what else? You have to set up your gateway. And the gateway is normally the typical gateway address of your router. In the normal terms, for example, when I change that, normally we go here, step by step, we delete it. So typically is 192.168.0.1, or some IT guys setting up at that S254. So it's up to you, and you set up the gateway and then say set, and that's okay. The next what you have to do is DNS. If you stream to the outside world, you should give a DNS address. For example, if you use a local router, I take the same example. We do the setting about 192 here, like that. So short 168. And keep in mind, one, you have setting that in this way. After you have a fixed IP address, you can change that anytime, and you can use your PC instead, which is much more easier than to do the setup. Let's take the DNS as a 192.168.0.1. Oh, and if you want, you can have a second DNS, but it's not needed. Then you spring over that, and then we are finished and say okay. And that's all. So our camera is now ready to use on the local NAN network, and that's all what we have to set. Keep in mind, if you use a dongle, LTE dongle and so on, that is a little bit more complex to do. That maybe will be another video on certain times. So okay, let's go out, and that's all on our setting on the camera as well, and then we're done. So for example, I'm talking about the PC, how to use the PC. I open here a browser, that's a Firefox for example. You go in your network address, and keep in mind we're setting about the 192, and we set the 168, and then the 0, and the 101, that was our IP address on the camera. And then I say okay, and then we get a log into the camera itself. So it takes a moment to log in. So when you input the IP address on the camera, it comes to the login screen, and the typical login is JVC as a username, and the password is 4 times 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times 0, and then you make the connection to the screen. So, and then the camera will come back to the screen, and now you can see we have the screen service and all the functionality, the full control of the camera, the overlay control, menu control, everything is then now on your web browser. Let me make the picture a little bit smaller, so you can see now you have your full control, like on the RMLP controller on your laptop. Of course, the laptop IP address needs to be in the same address room, so you have to, before you have to set up your PC as well in the local network. So now we're coming to the RMLP100. RMLP100 has on the backside also RJ45, which we have to connect it to our switcher, to our network switch. And let's do the setup. Before we can use the controller itself, we have to give the IP address for the controller. When you switch it on, it comes here with the settings bottoms. And then you have the right in the center, you have a bottom called network. You go to the network, and then you have to selection for the camera or for the controller. So press the controller at first, and then you see your IP settings. As you remember before, we're using 192.168.0, and then we need to give the controller an IP address. In my example here we have 150. Even I told you that the controller can work in the local network, then it comes our subnet address, our DNS address is 255.255.255.0, because in the C-class network. And if you want the controller working over the local network to another destination as well, you can input the gateway. It's not necessary as long as you are in a local network, but I added it here as well, 192.168.0.1 for example. Once you have set up this, then you say enter, and then the remote controller is already registered. The second operation what we have to do is you're going to the settings, you're going to the network bottom again, and then you're going to the camera registration. There is two choices, is auto or manual. Again, I prefer when I have use my network, I want to control my network, so I'm using the manual operation. And now you can see we have about memories, we can control up to 100 cameras. So we have a group. Each group has about 10 cameras. So the group number 1, and there is our camera number 1. That's the first selection what we have to do. So for example, camera 2 or camera 1. So you select by the cursor key up and down. So let's take the camera 1, and then we input here our IP address with the bottoms here. 192.168.0.100 is our camera number 1. You can have a port selection. You know the camera is controlled by the web port which you have set up in the camera. It's always port 80 as long as you not change it. And the password is also given. I explained you before, it's 4 times 0 on the PC, so you don't have to change it. That comes directly as a standard setup. Once you have that, then say enter and it is done. If you want to set up a next camera, like in our example the 101, switch to the next camera, camera 2, input the IP address 192.168.0 and 101, and then say enter, and your cameras are registered. So in my example here I have 2 registered cameras. Once you have connected the camera already, you immediately will see that the camera is connected, because you see these bottoms are gray, so means there is no connection, and these 2 bottoms have connection, and always the yellow bottom is active. So once it's active, you immediately can start to control the camera or make a position call of the camera, whatever you want. You can select then the camera or the groups. Keep in mind that you have here your group settings, like here, or your camera group. So we have position groups. We can store 100 positions for one camera, but we can also have a camera group about 100 cameras, and each camera has 10 cameras as a group. So keep in mind that when you do your settings, you are select the right group to the right camera. And that's all for that kind of settings.
So for Roland, basically is going to be the same thing. Both things we're going to run today, the V60HD, but I'm going to also run the remote control software for the V60HD. And both things, computer and the V60HD, have to be connected to the same existing network that Gustav explained to us now. So basically those 2 things are connected to the same switcher. The cameras and the controller and the computer are connected. So let's see on the V60HD how we set up the IPs. Okay, so on the V60HD, I will call the menu. We will see the menu through the multi-viewer output, as always. I can see it on the onboard surface as well, but to show you, I will show it on the multi-viewer output. I will go to the line control, which is number 14 on the menu. And then, as Gustav said, we prefer manual connections rather than dynamic ones for this kind of configuration. So I just choose manually, and then I have to give an IP address. And this time we are sharing 192.168.0, and I allocated the V60HD in the 201. Subnet mask is the same thing. Gustav said 255.255.255.0, and that's it. If I want to check that I did the settings correctly, there is an information option that when you enter on it, it gives to you the information on related to the network for this V60HD. So the status is connected, so it's right connected to the switcher. IP address, we did it correctly, is 201, and subnet mask is on 255. So that's all the settings you have to do on the V60HD. If you want to go deep into it, or you want to do all the kind of connections, you will have to change here to using the HDCP, and the unit will be expecting someone to give to it an IP, something like a router or something like that. Okay, but let's go back to manually. Okay, that was the settings for the V60HD. Let's do the settings on the computer now. First thing I have to do is to check that my computer is connected to the existing network. So I can see I gave a manual IP address ending in 200. Remember, V60HD is 201, my computer is 200, and is on existing network where the JVC cameras and the JVC controller are existing. So now I just open the V60HD remote control software, which is a free software that is downloadable from the Roland website. And the first thing I have to do is I have a connection button on the bottom corner on the left. I just turn it on. And the first thing is telling me I cannot connect to it. Let's check what happened. Oh, my IP address is wrong. It's not on this one, it's 0. this is exactly the same IP address I just set on the V60HD. Let's go to connect. So now it's telling me that we have 3 different options. We can go offline if we want to do settings without the unit. We can go for V60, which will be just as a demo setup for it, or we can go to RCS, which is remote control software. This means that we are actually controlling remotely the V60HD. Then, specifically, we built a control for the cameras on the software, which is on the GPI camera section down here. If I open this, I counter this window that has a positioner and everything. But first, we need to tell to the software or tell to the V60HD which camera has each IP. So camera 1, if I go here to the setup, it will tell me first thing protocol. We develop JVC protocol inside our unit, so it's just by selecting JVC, it's already asking me for an IP address. Let's take it correct. We said one camera was 101. The login name and the password is the same that Gustav said before, JVC and 4x0. And the first camera, it was 101. If I want to make a second setup for a second camera, it's the same thing. I select camera 2, I go to my setup, JVC, and this time I think the IP for the second camera was 100. Okay, so now 2 cameras I have then connected and working with the JVC cameras. I can just use my joystick to move them around. I have all the controls about the zoom, the focus, and everything. On the V60HD, we saw on the remote control software, we see all these fancy window with the positioner, the joystick, and everything. Anyway, that's not mandatory to use the V60HD with the JVC cameras, because all those controls are built on the internal menu. If you go to camera control, we have camera 1, JVC is the protocol we are using, same thing going on for the IP addresses, and now login and password. And then you have all the controls here. For example, now I'm gonna be doing a pan control to the right in one of the cameras, and just by holding the button of the value on the menu, I can just operate the JVC cameras. Of course, I can do pan, I can do tilt. Okay, so I can move them specifically to the position I like. But as always, when you are using PTZ cameras, it's very handy to have presets on cameras. So the same presets that Gustav did before, I can recall them from here. So I can let's recall preset 1. Are you sure? Yes. And then camera goes back to Gustav. There is one specific function that we have, which is that you can recall the same memory for all the cameras at the same time. So right now we have 2 cameras, both of them have memories stored on position number 1 or memory number 1. I can make them that when I recall preset 1 on one camera, all the cameras go to preset 1. Let's recall now preset 2. Are you sure? Yes. So now both cameras move into preset 2 just by recalling one of them. And then the integration between the JVC cameras and the Roland mixers are not just about the control of the PTZ cameras. We can also see, if you come down here, we can see that we can address a tally channel for each camera. So the tally will be shown on the existing LEDs on the physical cameras. Let's see a close-up of that. Okay, so we can see now, for example, that we have a program is on channel 2 and preview is in channel 1. And you can see that reflected on the JVC cameras. If I switch between 1 and 2, you see that the first one goes in red and the other one goes in green. So, as you see, the information between the tally is already transmitted through the IP control. So the IP control is not just about controlling the position and the memories of the camera, it also transmits the tally. And not just to the cameras, the controller, the JVC controller can show the same information about the tally on the built-in screen. So that was all the configurations for the Roland and the JVC cameras in order to work and communicate each other. Gustav?
Yeah, thank you for listening to us and hope we give you important information. Leave us your comment here on the video site, or if you have any question, leave us there. We try to help you and give you answers. If you want to have more information, please visit our website as Roland and as well as for JVC or JVC Kenwood websites. Thank you very much for listening.